Over the summer, we filmed our Okinawa episode. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's an episode I am very proud of. But it was hard work with a lot of travel. I flew from London to Tokyo, met Greg in the airport in Tokyo, and then flew straight on to Naha. After filming there, it was on to Ishigaki for a few days of filming before flying back to Tokyo. It was successful, but hard work in tough conditions. So, a break was in order. From Tokyo, I flew to Honolulu and then on to Maui, where I met my wife. Maui is the second largest of the 8 major Hawaiian islands, and it sits over 2,000 miles from the mainland United States. It is, like all of Hawaii, a volcanic island and is anchored by 2 volcanoes, one extinct and the long-dormant Haleakala. Kahului Airport lies in the valley formed by these 2 volcanoes, and as the trade winds stampede through the valley, you can often experience some exciting approaches to the airport. Maui itself feels quite different from the other islands I've been to. It's lush, verdant, and tropical, with large swaths of rainforest, but this is a volcanic island after all, so there are parts of it that look like the surface of another planet. But from that landscape comes seafood, vegetables, and fruit. And from that fruit comes deliciousness. Another food you will find all over Maui is this glorious stuff, banana bread. Banana bread sounds a little bit pedestrian, but it is something that is done particularly well in Maui, and that's for a couple of reasons. The first is these beautiful little things, the latundan banana or apple banana. They're originally from the Philippines, and they grow all over the hills in Maui, and they are quite different from the normal bananas that we find in the grocery store because they have a slightly acidic apple-like taste to them. Not overwhelmingly apple, but enough to make it different. So it immediately changes the flavor profile of this glorious stuff. The second and probably more important thing is that every little roadside stall, every little mom and pop bakery has their own secret recipe, secret way of doing things, secret ingredient they mix in to make it their own. This one from Four Sisters, a tiny little mom and pop shop run by first-generation Filipinos. They originally started using sour cream to give it a little bit of a tang and a lot of moisture, but the proprietor told us that the sour cream was just too expensive, so the nearest and cheapest available alternative was vanilla pudding. And that turns out to be what makes this one so exemplary, so moist, so beautiful. But each little stall will have its own flavor or variant or secret weapon. But look how absolutely stunning that is. Really moist. And it has that little apple tang, that little citrus tang. And I'm going to eat all of it. So that's glorious. So when you see one of the roadside stalls, stop. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Check out what's for lunch. Hawaiian food is a lot more complicated than it might first appear, and that's because its origins and its influences are so diverse. There's a reason for that. In the 19th century, people came from all over the world to work in the sugar plantations, and when they came here, they brought with them their food culture, their techniques, and their flavors. And when they arrived in Hawaii, they didn't necessarily want to eat what was available to them here, which wasn't a whole lot, frankly, so they started restaurants and stores to cater to their local communities. At the end of the plantation era, they didn't necessarily go back to their countries. Many did, but many stayed here. And their flavors and their techniques integrated into Hawaiian food culture, and now you can see it everywhere on everyday dishes that are proudly Hawaiian. From Portugal, yeah, people came from Portugal. Actually, they came from the Azores, which, not coincidentally, is another volcanic island or set of islands in an ocean, the Atlantic this time. And the Portuguese brought with them their expertise at cooking with pork, chili peppers, tomatoes. From Korea, you'll see kimchi all over the menu, bulgogi and bulgogi cooking techniques. From the Philippines, adobo, cooking with vinegar. From Cantonese China, and this is extraordinary. There is a dish in Hawaii called sai min, which is a noodle dish. It is a Hawaiian dish through and through. It was created by Cantonese Chinese migrants, but you cannot find it in southeastern China. In fact, you cannot find it anywhere. But along with the creation of that dish, Cantonese Chinese brought with them stir fry, sweet and sour. But arguably the most prevalent influence in Hawaiian food culture is Japanese. You'll see sushi, sashimi, tempura, and Hawaiian versions of that all over Hawaiian menus. But arguably the most iconic
is this, the plate lunch. Now, the origins of the plate lunch are murky at best, as the origins of many good foods are, but there's general consensus in the academic world that the plate lunch is an evolution of the bento box. And when Japanese workers came here, again during the plantation era, they wanted to bring that tradition of the bento box, basically the lunch box, with them. But there weren't the same materials for the containers or the same food, obviously. So the plate lunch was born, and is now a staple of Hawaiian food culture. And it is simply a box, and it always comes with a big scoop of white rice, and then, rather strangely, a scoop of macaroni salad, which is kind of the bridge between Asia and North America, and then one of several dozen proteins. In this instance, spam, which, as we've talked about in previous episodes, is huge in Japanese and Hawaiian culture because of its shelf life and its versatility. And then in this instance, kalua pork, which is a Hawaiian riff on slow-cooked pulled pork, usually pork shoulder. And then teriyaki chicken. Teriyaki, another wonderful Japanese influence, which has, again, been adopted deep into Hawaiian culture. And that influence has become the backbone of Hawaiian food from those 5 major cultures, which I think is a really important reflection of Hawaiian society and Hawaiian food. So the plate lunch, as esoteric and Hawaiian as it seems, is extraordinarily diverse in its origins.
And let's wrap up the day with a sweet and another great example of Japan's influence on Hawaiian cuisine.
Another legacy of Japan's influence over Hawaiian food culture is this guri. It was started or created in Japan in the early 1900s by Jokichi Tasaka, who initially called it goody, as in something good to eat. But his son, Gunji, thought maybe that's a little bit too hard for the elderly Japanese population to say, so guri was born. Gunji eventually emigrated to the US, to here, specifically Maui, opened up this shop ostensibly for the Japanese community here, but it has become a beloved staple of the Hawaiian population. It's a sherbet, really, or sherbet, depending on where you're from. So it's condensed milk, lemon lime soda, and guava juice. Only 2 flavors are served. Pineapple, made with local pineapple juice, and strawberries. You can get 2 scoops for $1.50, so it's incredibly good value.
And, well, I guess I couldn't wait to get stuck in, apparently. You don't make 70 travel guides without becoming a little bit of an expert on booking flights. For this trip alone, there were over 9, count them, 9 flights to research, plan, and of course find the best price for. I rely heavily on Skyscanner to find the best price, do the heavy lifting for me. They've got a great suite of tools for flexibility when it comes to flight searches, like date flexibility, so I can search across multiple dates to find those fare fluctuations. They also do great tools for location flexibility as well, meaning I can search for flights departing an entire country rather than a specific airport or city, which gives me a ton more options. And on top of that, they trawl through over 1,000 flight providers, including some of the smaller OTAs, which other search engines skip over. So for trips like this, frankly, every other trip I take, Skyscanner is where I start. Maui's unique position in the middle of the Pacific creates some interesting phenomenon, and some interesting people who have figured out those phenomenon.
There's an interesting phenomenon here in Maui called the trade winds, and they are present about 80% of the year. And they come with pretty alarming regularity and predictability. But here's the crazy thing. You sit on the beach in the morning and it's calm as anything. Glass water, not a breath of wind. And we were doing this the other day, and the lifeguard came over the loudspeaker and said, "Please secure your loose items, pull down your umbrellas. The trade winds are coming in early." And I looked at my wife and I was like, what is he talking about? It's calm as anything. And then in an instant, whoosh, it hits you. And umbrellas are flying everywhere, and beach balls and small children are tumbling down the beach. And I'm thinking, how did he do that? And so I went over and asked him, and they said they can see it. They can see it coming. They can see it on the water. They can see the color of the sea change. They can see the texture of the sea change. They can see the white caps coming towards it. And I think most interestingly, he said, we can smell it. The air smells differently when the wind kicks up and changes direction. And that's when we know it's coming. And that's also when you know you're really good at your job.
Maui and Hawaii were first inhabited because of those trade winds and the sea currents that accompany them. In fact, the channel that runs to the south of Maui is known as the Road to Tahiti because the current will take you, whether you like it or not, all the way to the South Pacific. You can understand why Americans come to Hawaii. It's easy, accessible paradise, a place where the air and the water are both 80 degrees, and there's no immigration on arrival, and it uses the same currency. Very easy, but yet look at it. Let's be real though. Despite becoming a state in 1959, there is nowhere else in the United States that is anything like this. So I suppose you can understand that visitors might sometimes forget they're still in the US. Last night I overheard an elderly man ask his waitress if she was, quote, familiar with the United States. She paused, smiled, and said, "I'm from Utah." So there you go. A quick overview of this beautiful island in the Pacific. And if you are considering a beach destination in 2025, can I please urge you to consider Maui? After the fires in Lahaina in 2023, a few loud voices urged tourists to stay away, but never told them to come back. And now local businesses are suffering as a result. And I truly believe this beautiful, wonderful place deserves support. So come check it out. You will not be disappointed.